What does the word gutsy mean to you?
Oh, damn. Ugh. That's like authentic, being your true authentic self. That's what gutsy means to me. I mean, in a world where like authenticity is seen as gutsy is, kind of sad, but like your authenticity, I think that's what being gutsy is, like saying your truth, saying what you actually mean, and just being bold about it.
You're listening to the Gutsy Podcast, where we talk about all things real, raw, and ridiculous about running a business authentically. Whether you need an inspirational pick me up or a swift kick in the mental ass, the Gutsy Podcast is your bi weekly guide to getting out of your head and back into action. I'm Laura Ora, branding and mindset coach for female entrepreneurs, CEO of Works & Co., and your host on this journey through entrepreneurship. It's time to fuel your gutsy. We're starting off the year with a bang, quite literally. Listen, pleasure is such a fundamental human need, but it often gets overlooked, pushed to the side, or life challenges or traumas have caused a block from giving and receiving true pleasure. Today, we're chatting with sexologist Ava Pikul about the impact of pleasure and how orgasms and true personal pleasure can lead you to your most fulfilled success in life and business. Ava is a holistic sex expert specializing in authentic tantra and transformational therapy. She revolutionizes your sex life so you can ditch the fear, break through barriers, and live within your authentic pleasure. Her clients not only leave with better orgasms, but a completely transformed quality of life. It's the beginning of the year, which always just naturally brings a renewed sense of focus and drive and goals. And it's also a good time to just look at the team that you're working with. Where are you excelling? Where do you really feel like you're doing well? And where do you feel like you could use some guidance? Having a coach on your side to fulfill a very specific need can not only help you to grow, but it can accelerate your growth. One of my favorite parts of being a coach is helping to guide you through the things that have kept you stuck for so fucking long. More often than not, I hear like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that's what it was. I couldn't see it. I didn't know that's what the thing was. I could not discover the root. And therein lies the power, my friend, discovering the root and knowing how to take simplified action forward. Let's move forward together, my friend. I've opened up spots on my calendar and I am taking on 4 new coaching clients for the beginning of 2024. So if you've been listening to the podcast, if you've been digesting my content on social media, you're like, you know what, I'm kind of feeling the itch. I think that I might be ready to move forward. Then go to lauraora.com and book a clarity session. This is going to give you an incredible insight of what it's like to work with me and just how incredibly quickly and easily we can shift a lot of that shit together. If you're ready to get out of your own way, you're ready to move forward, and you're ready to have a guide that supports you along the way, go to lauraora.com and book a clarity session today. Ava, welcome to the Gutsy Podcast.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yes, and happy new year to everyone. This is officially the first episode of 2024. And
Yes.
we're starting this shit off with a bang. Like we're just going deep right away because that's kind of how we do things around here. So, gosh, I have about a bajillion questions to ask you because this is a topic that I'm just naturally interested in. But before we get into all that, tell me a little bit more about you and your entrepreneurial journey. What has led you to where you are today?
Hmm. That is a really great question. Well, I would say when started to travel around the world, I was in India and like, going on these like quote unquote spiritual journeys. And what I really found was this disconnection between like, okay, where does my sexuality and pleasure play into this? Because a lot of what I was being taught was very much about transcendence and not being the body and basically kind of moving around these negative human experiences by exiting the human experience altogether. And I just didn't really jive with that. I was like if this is what enlightenment looks like I don't want it. Like I want to be in my body. I want to enjoy my body, my pleasure, and also be able to transcend through that, And so when I started to do this type of work, I mean, man, there was a lot of challenges and still are in my entrepreneurial journey doing this type of work because it's different. There's a lot of unique nuances that start to happen through this space that maybe other people don't otherwise experience so I mean, long story short, as I entered, you know, moving into this this journey, building a business, all of the things, serving people to the highest of my capacity, I really found how integral it was to keep in tune with my own practice, with my own body, and especially my pleasure and joy, because building a business is not it's not just about making money. It's not just about getting people through the door. It's like, how can I serve humanity to the highest of my capacity? And, the money that I do receive, like it's it's for the benefit of all. It's for my joy, my fulfillment. And that ripple effect is a really integral part, I guess, to the building blocks of my business. But it's really my lifestyle and how it just trickles out and how I want to show up in the world as a whole as a result of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of curious what led you into this line of work. What called you? I mean, I know that you were searching for your own joy and pleasure, but what made you feel called to help serve others in this role?
I kind of fell into it, to be honest. I mean, from a very young age, I was always curious about sexual pleasure. I was always like touching myself and exploring my body. And, when I started to walk into the real world as an adult, there was still that disconnection. I'm like, okay, like there's something more to this. So as I move forward with that journey, I ended up becoming a stripper at one point, and I still traveled a lot, and just started to explore what that meant, and then eventually became an authentic tantra practitioner, hypnotherapist, all the good things that allowed me to really dive deeper into this work. So I often say that I went from a stripper to a sexpert, but in a non-dual way. Like, I'm all of those things. And I think that a big part of this journey for me, and continues to be, is to accept all these facets of my humanity. There's this concept of non-duality, right? Of like, there's parts of me that misses the stripper self. So how can I bring her out into, how does she want to show up in my business? What is the message, the power she wants to bring? And then there's the other side of me where I practice tantric Buddhism. So I'm this Buddhist, where I'm doing these profound practices and meditations, and then also cultivating my sexuality. So there's all these different facets of these parts that I like to bring forward to people. Like, I'm not the type of person to just show up like, this is my business self and this is my, this is what I do in my personal life. Like, it's all one and the same. So I think that's a really important message for me, as well as I think a lot of other
Mhm.
women who are moving through this journey.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's not a magical switch, right?
Mhm.
You don't just turn the business on or off. You don't turn your personal on or off. When you're an entrepreneur, it's fully integrated, right? And while it comes in different waves or percentages, everything is always a part of you. And so I think that this message about what I'm hearing kind of is this embodiment of accepting all facets of yourself, not just in personal life, but in business. Female entrepreneurs, we were chatting before we started recording, like what is required of us in this healing journey, and it really kind of calls us forward to get to know ourselves more.
Yeah.
So as you have progressed, as you've started to work with women and men and all different types of people, what are you finding that people are hesitating on the most? What are some of these blocks that continue to show up?
Oh my goodness. That's such a good question. So many things. I think especially for women is trust, self-trust. Like, and that really prevents us as women to trust the world and to trust others and to trust our bodies and to trust our relationships and to trust our emotions, because trust is the foundation. Like if we can't trust ourselves, nothing else is going to work. Nothing. So I find that working with women, I mean, there's women that will come to me that are like, I have, these sexual issues that are happening in my relationship and I don't feel fulfilled. And then we find that it's really a non-sexual solution. It's a lot of times she doesn't trust herself. How can anything work, including your business, if you don't trust, right? So we start to look at these deeper patterns and why these behaviors are like showing up in the relationship, showing up in the business. And really, I just like, what I do is I cut through all the bullshit. Like, I'm not here to continue to talk about the issue for another year, for another decade. Like, let's cut through the shit and get to the root cause. So that's what I do with a lot of women and men and all sorts of people, is really go into that root cause of like, okay, why can't you trust yourself? What's going on here? And allow them to discover and allow that unfolding to alchemize, like within their bodies, within their relationships, within their business. It's like this ripple effect, right? And then what we do is we start to layer pleasure on top, because pleasure is this aspect of ourselves that is pure medicine. Like we're wired for this. We're wired for this shit. It's like in your bones. So what that means, on the standpoint of pleasure, is not just sexual pleasure. It's not just a bodily pleasure. It's where can I find more joy, more fulfillment in my everyday life? It's an embodiment, but it's also building our capacity to hold more. Pleasure allows us to feel safe, right? So it actually tells our subconscious it's okay to relax, it's okay to open, it's okay to trust. So even from this standpoint of the nervous system, we're doing so much work there. I mean, energetically, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally. I use pleasure to work with all of those facets of ourselves. So I would say, again, trust is that foundational piece that I find that most women need a little bit of like assistance there, and sometimes we don't even realize until we go into that deeper level of the mind and we're like, whoa, like I didn't even realize I didn't trust myself. And then we can easily just remove that block and like, boom, it can be easy as well. I think that healing oftentimes gets associated with like this long, huge process. And it's just, it's painful and it's long and it's tedious and it's emotional. And it is all of those things, right? But like, we don't need to get to a certain point in our quote unquote healing process to have fulfillment, joy, success, all of the things that we desire.
I love that reminder because I think that we put those things off until, right? Once I have blank, then I can, right?
Yeah,
Once I have gone through this process, then I can start having fun. Once I have healed, then I can start feeling joy. And it's really about integrating those things as they're all happening, right? Like two things can be true. You can be healing and you can experience joy and fulfillment, right?
exactly.
You can be shifting something in your business and feel deep fulfillment, right? Like there's just it doesn't have to be so separated, and I think that that's often kind of what we're trained to do is to like focus on one thing, and then once we achieve that, then we can have the other thing.
It creates so much conflict. And your brain cannot hold conflicting beliefs. It cannot, So what happens is I find, especially with women who are building their businesses, they're like, oh, I have to be this one thing over here. And then over here, I'm working on this other thing. And then that's what creates the conflict. And that's what creates this emotional roller coaster. So a big part of, this work is getting off that emotional roller coaster. Like, I think especially for women, like it's so normalized, like, oh, I'm in this part of my cycle. And, it's just the way things are that I feel angry and upset at the world and disconnected and not myself. And I call bullshit. Like, yes, of course we're going to have days, but it's not meant to be a normal experience that you're supposed to have every single month. Like, so a big part of this is like, helping women disconnect from this idea that it's their hormones or that it's, something's wrong with them, or it's just because they're a woman that they're experiencing hardship. I used to have PMDD. It's just like PMS on steroids. And a lot of women have this, not even knowing. And it's this emotional roller coaster that feels like it's never going to end. You lose weeks every single month from having this experience of just pain and depression and anxiety and the physical symptoms and all of the things. And of course, that's going to affect everything, and everyone around you. So I think that there's this holistic view that we need to see ourselves as like, see our full humanity, see our emotions, our bodies, our sexuality, our pleasure as catalysts, as the ability to alchemize whatever adverse experiences we might be having.
Mm-hmm. So how do you, because that PMDD stuff is no joke, right? I know that a lot of women are shaking their head, nodding right now.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you begin to alchemize? How do you start, like, how do you know the difference between this is my actual physical body going through something, or this is a conditioning that I have absorbed and now I'm thinking that I'm having these things, right? Because it can be a delicate line. So how do you shift from that? How do you start to really enjoy that pleasure more often? So that, because I mean, a good week and a half, right? 2 weeks sometimes out of the month.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about it online all the time about how our bodies are, this is why I'm pissed off and this is why I'm angry and this is why I'm snapping at people and all this stuff. So how do we debunk all that?
Yeah. So if you feel like you're on an emotional roller coaster, I mean, basically what's happening is that, I didn't mean this to be a conversation about hormones and stuff, but I mean, it plays into it. Basically when we're moving through our cycle, even if you don't have a cycle, like there's still an energetics there to it. And it's basically when your hormones change, which is natural and normal throughout the month, it's shedding light on the unexpressed emotions, feelings, traumas that haven't been dealt with yet. So, it's actually kind of like this magic superpower that we have. It doesn't feel that way, but it's as if every single month we get this opportunity that it sheds light on these deeper aspects of ourselves. And when we actually don't bring attention to that, that's what brings up all of this external stuff. So we blame it on the husband, we blame it on the kids, we blame it on the lack of finances, the external things, without actualizing that, hey, this part of the month is shedding light on these deeper truths, that I haven't been able to express yet. So the first part of bringing more pleasure in is not from this intellectual standpoint. It's really through not just the body either. It's this deep subconscious level. And that is essentially what affects everything around us. Your subconscious mind creates over 95% of your reality. So we can't even talk about bringing more pleasure and sex and fulfillment into our lives without addressing that first. So it's those subconscious beliefs that we're holding about ourselves. And then, what women can start to do to just increase this level of fulfillment in their lives is really just by asking themselves at any given moment throughout the day, like, how can I make this moment a 10? And this is also providing a space for our subconscious to surface and say, hey, like, what is getting in the way of me even making this moment an 8 or a 9 or a 9.5? So taking just a split moment in time to say, yeah, I can get my needs met right now is so incredibly powerful. And again, it's happening right then and there because you can feel the effects of it. And then if you have those thoughts in your mind of like, I don't deserve it, now's not the right time, all of those thoughts that we have, that's your cue that there's a subconscious belief that you're holding on to that you're actually preventing yourself from experiencing more pleasure, joy, and fulfillment in that moment. So it's kind of this beautiful calibration between our current experience, whatever that current emotion is, the current thing that we're engaging with, whether it's just drinking our coffee in the morning or seeing a client, how can we engage with those experiences right then and there, as well as weave in these parts of ourselves that want to alchemize. So I find that, when I'm working with especially women, it's again implementing that trust within themselves. And then we start to, layer those other things on top, like the sexual pleasure and working with, because this is a whole nother conversation that we can get into, is like working with the memory stored in the genitals, all of these different, we have all of these zones within our sexual center that hold memory, that hold imprints, that hold emotions. So, that's a whole nother thing that we can't just skip over, right?
Right. Absolutely. And what does that look like? Or what does that sound like? How does that present itself?
The sexual aspects of this
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, so part of this is learning about the body, like learning, honestly, it's just like that basic foundation of like knowing where things are placed, knowing what the vulva is versus the vagina, knowing where these points are within our bodies that can trigger profound moments of pleasure and release and satisfaction. So, what I'll do is I'll take women and I'll explain to them like these are the parts of your anatomy, um, your genitalia that can engorge and fill with pleasure. And it's not just about that physical fulfillment either. Like I said, there's this weaving happening between getting our needs met and the beliefs showing up for ourselves and the energy and the memories associated with these areas of the body. So, to put this into perspective, women can experience over 15 different forms of orgasm. And what we're normally experiencing is one of those, which is normally a clitoral orgasm, right? Is it's easier to locate. It's more surface level type of orgasmic experience. And then a lot of women experience pain during any type of penetration. So, there's numbness there and pain. And I think that, yes, part of this is the memories and trauma that are stored in our genitals, right? But it's also just us not knowing how to turn on those areas and to give ourselves enough time to also provide space for, if we have a partner, to allow them, to guide them in that. So a big part of this is like honestly self-exploration. Like where does it feel good? Where is their numbness? Where is their irritation? Where are these parts of the body, and not just the genitals, but anywhere on the body, that we're not giving the time and attention to? Because, it's really easy to grab our vibrator and have, a 30-second clitoral orgasm. That's easy, right? But,
Right.
and I'm not saying those aren't bad, sometimes we just need a little quick buzz in the shower or whatever. But there's this deeply profound amount of fulfillment um, and healing that can occur when we are allowing ourselves to go into those deeper layers of our sexuality. So talking about these different forms of orgasm, they all have this unique medicine. It's not just about turning on that area and having this cervical orgasm or A spot orgasm or P spot, or that's not what that means, because that's never going to happen if you're not dealing with the undercurrent of what's actually going on in the subconscious mind and the energy, right? So there's this weaving that needs to happen. A lot of times people just want to jump straight to it, like, I want to learn about the G-spot orgasm, and then they get really disappointed when they find that their G-spot is completely numb, or they can't find it, or it feels irritating. So I think that there needs to be this understanding that we need to weave in all of these different components. There's not just one magic formula. I can talk about how to find your G spot all day and how to squirt and all of these things. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. That's great if it does, amazing. But for a lot of women, when they go, they might feel a little disappointed, right, by watching a couple YouTube videos or reading a book or whatever it may be. about these different orgasmic experiences and how they can have them. And then, they think that they're broken or something is wrong with them, or they're never going to be able to experience that level of pleasure for whatever reason. So I just want to say that there is another level to that story, right? You can't, it's very difficult anyways to just learn this stuff, from a book or from a YouTube video, because your body is yours, uniquely yours. And you're going to have things happening and going on there that you're not going to know how to deal with when they come up. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating too. And we're going to come back to orgasms here in a second because I have more questions about that. But first, I just want to kind of acknowledge that, it's a lot of this too is about one, getting out of autopilot, right? We're talking to driven women right now, right? On the go, pushing through, hustling through things, building incredible stuff. There's often a sense of control there, right? Controlling the outcome, controlling when and how things are happening, and just not slowing down long enough to explore what's happening in our mind and what's happening in our body. So, what are some ways that you help women to just start to like turn back on, not just physically and sexually, but just mentally and spiritually as well?
A big part of this, again, like I mentioned before, is cutting through the bullshit. So I use a method called transformational therapy, which is a form of hypnosis that weaves in a bunch of other methods as well. And basically, in that 2-hour session, it's like, boom, here's the thing. This is what's going to happen. This is, how we're going to change the perception, the belief surrounding it. And you're going to go back into the world with a ton of clarity. And it's interesting too, because again, like I mentioned a moment ago, is like we have this belief that it has to take years, that it has to take even months. And, whatever those bigger blocks may be, can be looked at within a couple of hours. Like I think that a lot of us believe that this healing process is somehow set in stone. Like, this is the way that things are. These are the studies that show XYZ, and this is what works. Let me tell you, as a practitioner in this field of like trauma healing and all that, we're all figuring it out still. We're paving the way. So, I invite anyone who's listening, women included, like we have to open our minds to the possibility that, again, it doesn't have to take years, that we are worthy of it right now, right here. So anyways, to answer your question, a big catalyst of this is looking into the subconscious, and that's the method that I use. And then, if women want to move forward into working with their sexuality and their pleasure and how that relates back into the relationships and their business and the money and all of the things, then that would be moving deeper into the realms of authentic tantra. So that now we're working directly with the energy body. Now we're working directly with the Tibetan 5 elemental system. So when we're working with the energy body, now we're working with the sexual pleasure. It's like it's all this beautiful weaving that's happening, and that it's not just providing us the breeding grounds for a profound amount of orgasmic experiences and sexual pleasure and all of these things, but it's impacting every facet of our lives now as well. And I can't speak on authentic tantra without mentioning the fact that I practice and teach from lineage-based tantra. So a lot of the work that I do is rooted in Buddhism, in tantric Buddhism. And you don't hear a lot about that out there. A lot of what we think of as tantra is like sacred sexuality and neo-tantra, and that's not what I practice or teach. So a big part of this is heart-based, is working directly with your own energy. Like, I'm not providing an experience for you. You're doing that on your own. Like, I'm the guide, And I think that we, again, get so caught up in like, especially in the realms of like sacred sexuality, it's like somebody is providing an experience, whether it's like some Kundalini awakening or some orgasmic opening. And we see it all the time. I'm seeing these videos on Instagram all the time of people having these orgasmic experiences and they're barely even being touched. And all that's happening there is somebody is manipulating and moving your energy, which is relatively easy. And it's also, goes to say it's not always meaning you're having some big spiritual awakening. It can actually be quite unsafe if your body isn't prepared for that type of energy movement. So I just wanted to make that clear as well as like we move further into the conversation about tantras, because that opens up a whole nother can of worms that oftentimes has its own taboos and its own ideas and its own perceptions of what that means and what that is.
Look, I can tell you all day long about the amazing things that we can do together in a one-on-one coaching setting, but I'm going to tell you something from one of my clients this time instead. She said, one of the biggest and most challenging parts of this was working through my resistance. I was first able to identify the difference between what I love, which I found out was alignment, and the things that I just don't want. When it came time to reach for my truth, Laura held me accountable and supported working through my resistant thoughts that had been telling me that I could not achieve nor deserve the amazing business and life that I dreamed of. If you work with Laura, be prepared to get goosebumps, life-changing perspective shifts, and a personal and business life that you never knew you deserved. I mean, imagine that. Imagine actually living out the things that you keep thinking about, the things that you keep daydreaming about, the stuff you're putting on your vision board and journaling about. It's all possible, my friend, because you are capable. My job is to guide you along the way. So if you're ready to make this shift, if you're ready to really step into this life and business you keep thinking about, go to lauraora.com and click on Book a Clarity Session. By the end of the call, I guarantee you're going to know what to do next. Can you tell us a little bit more about what Tantra means in case anyone's new to that word or concept?
I found that a lot of people have their own descriptions or whatever about what Tantra is. But from a Tibetan tantric Buddhist perspective, because that's the type of tantra that I practice and teach, I believe that tantra presents itself as a means for us to connect to our full humanity and to see the full humanity in the world around us and in every sentient being, actually, not just our world, but all sentient beings across all worlds. And what this means is that we're pulling back the layers to see and feel and sense and become our infinite self, our Buddha nature, our godlike self, our universal self, whatever you want to call it. I don't like to use the word higher self, but our Buddha self, our infinite self, whatever that may be. It's like we're pulling back the layers and we're using the body as that vehicle to look in on that, to feel that, to sense it, to become it. And then because we live in a 3D reality, because we live in a body and we get to experience all the pleasures of our world, we get to bring that back and share that with humanity. We get to bring that back into our relationships. We get to bring that back into the world around us as a whole and impact the lives of all people, including our clients, So I believe that's what Tantra means. Yeah.
Beautiful. It's so much connection,
Mm-hmm.
reconnection with self, reconnection with things and people and experiences, about being present and really tapping into what does that actually mean for us? What does that feel like for us? I've always just found that the more that you are yourself, the easier everything gets to be. I mean, it proves itself time and time again. So I want to come back to orgasms because I know that's a topic of discussion that everyone loves to listen to and learn more about. And I'm curious if you could shed some light on, you mentioned that there are 15 different ways to orgasm. Could you share some of those with us that maybe we're not familiar with?
Yeah. So there is over 15 because there's an infinite amount of numbers and combinations that we can have. Um, And, before we talk about these different kinds of orgasm, part of this is in our own understanding of what orgasm means and what orgasm is to us.
Hmm.
And from a tantric perspective, orgasm is any peak moment of pleasure. But a lot of times, our bodies, our nervous systems, our brains are so hardwired to think that orgasm is this one thing. It's usually this peak moment where it's just ecstatic and blissful, and it lasts a relatively short amount of time and then it's gone. In Tantra, we believe that we can extend these periods of time. And what that means is that we're opening our pleasure capacity to hold these different forms of orgasm. So if we can hold ourselves at a peak moment of pleasure for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 1 hour, whatever it may be, we get to experience our full pleasure capacity, our full pleasure potential. And that's what brings about these different forms of orgasm. So there is this aspect. We need to slow down. We need to experience the full engorgement process. We can't rush these experiences. So some of these different orgasms, are like the G-spot orgasm, which most people are familiar with. But what a lot of people I find don't understand about the G-spot, for example, is that these different areas respond to different types of pleasure or pressure and stimulation. So for the G-spot, for example, like I mentioned before, a lot of women experience pain or numbness in that area. And that's because the G-spot responds to pressure. It doesn't respond and engorge with friction right away. So, for example, the G-spot needs to be warmed up with this pressure, usually from like a finger, right? And you have to know what that tissue feels like. The tissue feels like the roof of your mouth for the G-spot. And you'll know it starts to engorge because it will get large, it will increase in size. So, like for that area of the body, you're stimulating it, right? You're engorging it, which is basically meaning that this erectile tissue, because that's what it is, this erectile tissue is filling with blood. And now you're experiencing more stimulation and more sensation in that area. Now we can go in with more friction and work towards the back of the vaginal canal, for example, more towards the A spot, which is on the anterior side, belly button side of the vagina. That is relatively close in proximity to the cervix, which is all the way to the back of the vagina. So there's many different areas, and it's easier for me to, I guess, explain them from this perspective of engorgement and how to stimulate it rather than like, this is where it's located, because you're not going to know what to do once you get there. So, another beautiful area that I often like to teach about that I just mentioned was the A spot. So usually that can be reached with a toy. Usually your fingers are not long enough to reach to the back there, and that's a really smooth area. So that feels like a smooth area. It's not as far back as the cervix, but it's on the same side as the G spot. Okay. So what I'll usually instruct women to do is to start stimulating that area with gentle friction. And then what we'll do is move into pleasure transference. And you can use this on any area of your body. So pleasure transference means that now we're transferring the pleasure and sensation from the G spot that we've just warmed up. And now we're bringing it back into the A spot to start to stimulate that area. And then we're drawing the energy back down into the G spot and then moving back to the A spot, right? So what it's literally doing on the level of your nervous system is drawing that energy and drawing that pleasure into this other area of your body. And this is a really big part of how we start to also work with the emotions and the energetics that will often come up from these areas of the body. The G spot stores a lot of trauma. Okay. So for a lot of women, when they start, moving into working with this area of their body, they can start to have anger come up, especially. This was for me as well. So much anger came up for me. So many memories actually would pop into my head during, these type of self-pleasure sessions as well. So it's really fascinating and interesting, the types of memories, emotions, and feelings that arise. So I instruct women to stay present with that, to stay present with their bodies and what they're experiencing, because it is a healing process. and to continue moving with that. And we work with several different techniques. Pleasure transference is one of them. I teach other things, somatically and different breathing techniques and things like that as well, for women to start working with their emotional experience and the memories that are arising while layering the sexual pleasure on top. And that's what gets to alchemize whatever is arising. And, a note on like this memory that often arises. This is directly connected to what we call the very subtle mind. And the very subtle mind in Tibetan Buddhism is stored in the genitals, stored in our sexual center, and it stores all of our past life memories. So we can start talking about karmic stuff here. There's a lot to unpack, right? So I've had such interesting experiences working with my sexual pleasure and being present with what's arising and the types of memories that have come up and the type, even afterwards, not just during, but afterwards. It gets to release a lot of these karmic imprints that we're holding on to that are not ours any longer. So there's so much there that we can unpack. And this is why it's so important to do this type of work with someone that is qualified, I guess I want to say, because there's a lot of Tantra practitioners out there that's like, I got a weekend initiation. And it's just like, girl, I did this for, 3 years before getting certified. So like, you know what I mean? So there's also, especially since we're working with the karmic stuff and the energy behind this, we can't shy away from that. It's important to like know who the fuck is giving you this advice and who is guiding you through these experiences, because it's no joke. Like you can get entwined with some crazy shit, in this work. And there has to be this integrity of the practitioner who is providing, this foundation for you to work through. So I know I said a lot there. I hope I wasn't too all over the place, but anyways, going back to the orgasms, right? Because
Always back to the orgasm.
yes. Um, and I go off on these like kind of tangents because it's like I can't just talk about the G spot. I can't just talk about the A spot. Like there's so much more medicine to be had there. Um, so another fun one that I want to mention is like for women to explore the back side of the vagina. So usually we're so on that front side, like at the G spot, that type of area, especially like with a toy with the finger, it's usually all on that frontal side of the vagina. There's a lot more, like if you would just flip the toy or flip the finger or whatever it may be, to explore the back side of the vagina as well, because it's a whole different sensation. It's a whole nother thing. So, there's this self-exploration as well as like, you have to be present with those experiences, because if we're not, it's not going to be comfortable. It's like we're fishing around for something in there. And it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, what's going on? Like, I don't feel anything. It's painful. It's uncomfortable. Like, how do I be present with this? So it's like we need to build those foundations first as well, so that women can stay present with their experience. Otherwise, it's like, what's the point of teaching the 15 different forms of orgasm,
Right. I think another, and I love the education that you bring with it. And it's not just here are 15 spots and here is what to do, right? Like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think so much of this is about the understanding and how it plays into everything, right? So I love that you take the time to explain it on a deeper level. It's something that I think that helps absorb the information and understand the why on a deeper level. So thank you for that. And I know another thing that a lot of women experience is like, okay, when I go to experience pleasure, then my brain is on,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm thinking about everything. All of a sudden my to-do list pops up. I remember something that I was supposed to do 3 weeks ago all of a sudden. How do we shift from that busy mind into the pleasure mind?
Hmm. That one's not an easy one to answer. I mean, this has a lot to do with feeling safe in our bodies. So, and on the level of the nervous system, right? So resetting the nervous system to come back to this state of rest and digest, like it's okay for me to relax, is really important. And the way that we do this is like through the body, through somatics, which is a term that everyone knows by this point, right? Um, but I think what somatics often misses out on is that pleasure piece, like the sexual pleasure piece, especially. So the best way, again, is like to acknowledge that it's coming up, because sometimes we don't even acknowledge it. Sometimes we're just like literally fucking our way through it,
Yeah.
literally and figuratively fucking our way through it. And without us even being aware of that, we're doing that, without us being aware that we're literally having sex with someone or ourselves and not even being there, like we can't even talk about being present. Like, so there's that first awareness piece of like, holy shit, yeah, I am checked out, until I get to that point of like, I'm almost there. And then you come and it's over and done with, So that presence piece is that continuation of just acknowledging when you are out of alignment, when you are out of your body, when you are dissociating, just acknowledging that. And the second piece to that would be to voice it. So you can voice it with yourself out loud or on a piece of paper. Like, I'm feeling dissociated. I'm feeling checked out. Like, literally, that's all you need to do. You could say that to your partner. And then the third part of that is to get your fucking needs met. Like, what are you needing? Because it's certainly not sex if you're checked out and dissociated, right? And usually what we're needing is connection. Usually what we're needing is more presence, more awareness, more autonomy, whatever that may be, to feel heard, to feel seen, to feel felt, right? If that makes sense, to feel felt.
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
so the next part of that is to get the need met, right? Can you voice that to your partner? I need connection right now. I need to feel seen. I need to feel heard. Can I just talk about this one thing with you that happened today? Or can I just lay here with you and cuddle and see where it goes? Like, we are often rushing to that end goal, right? Of the sexual experience. And where are you also giving your power away to allow that to happen? Are you giving your power away to your partner just to please them in that moment so they get off your back? I know a lot of women that do that. And then they'll
Yeah.
go and blame their partner for not pleasing them or for not fulfilling their needs. It's like, girl, you got to, people are not mind readers. We're not mind readers. You have to acknowledge the way that you're feeling, be able to voice that, and then get your needs fulfilled. Nobody can do that for you. No one. So I think that a big aspect of going back to this level of presence is just that simple foundation of like just knowing what you're feeling and knowing what you're needing, because that alone can be incredibly difficult for a lot of women. And without being specific about what you're needing too creates a lot of confusion. And I used to do this all the time with my partner, like, because I didn't know what I was experiencing. I'm like, I would become so emotional after sex. I would become distraught. I would feel angry. I would feel agitated. And I was like, what is this all about? I just had amazing sex. Like, I've always had really great sex with my partner. Um, and that has never been the issue. But the issue was like the connection piece. It's like I can fuck all day, but like at the end of it, like some stuff was coming up, and I'm like, I don't know what this is. Why do I feel like I'm rejected by him now all of a sudden after the sex is over? So we have to explore what we're actually needing in those moments and be able to get those needs met so that we can be present with the experience that we're having. And for me, that was my own self pleasure practice, because it was too much for me to hold the fact that I was with somebody else and I didn't know what I was feeling. And then he would get frustrated because we didn't know what was going on. So it's like I had to explore that on my own, in my own practice. And that didn't mean I wasn't also having sex with my partner, but like I had to really implement my own thing and be clear about that. So I would schedule my self pleasure practices. And this might feel like not spontaneous and boring to some of you, but that's what I had to do. Like, I really had to say, hey, babe, like, In 30 minutes, I'm going to be upstairs. I'm setting my timer and I'm going to do my orgasmic awareness practice. That's it. And sometimes I would do my practice while he was in the room doing other stuff, with my earphones in. Like I just did what I needed to do, and I allowed those emotions to come up. And it wasn't just me having orgasms. A lot of times I wouldn't even get to orgasm. I would be 10 minutes into my practice being present with my emotional state. And then the rest of the time I would be in an emotional release, you know? But that provided the breathing grounds for me to connect on a deeper level to myself, to my partner, to the world, to all of humanity, to my clients, and on and on and on and on and on. And I started to embrace those experiences as well. So, at first it's like we're so afraid, so scared to see what's going to come up. And I started to notice how good I felt afterwards and how the weight was lifted off of my shoulders. And then I was able to go deeper into those experiences. So it was about that initial hump for me, about addressing the avoidance of it, the resistance towards it. And after I got over that initial hump, it was like, okay, like I can do this. I can embrace it. And it doesn't have to be so painful. Like I can cry during my self-pleasure session and then have the most amazing orgasm I've ever experienced, you know? So it's about holding that non-duality within yourself of like, I can have it all, you know? And this experience doesn't have to look one certain type of way. So what I'm trying to get at is that this is how we experience our full pleasure potential. This is how you're going to connect to your Buddha self, your godlike self, your infinite self through your sexual experiences. And that's how we also experience all these different forms of beautiful orgasm as well.
Wow. And how does all that play into and affect then fulfilled success?
Mm. Ah,
Because I'm certain that those two go hand in hand
oh,
in such a
yes.
beautiful way.
Yes. So, one thing that comes up when we talk about sex and success is this idea that often circulates on social media, and we've all probably heard of it, and it's called sex magic. Okay. And what I want to say about that is your sexual experience is not meant to be a tool to like manipulate and manifest, right? Those things happen naturally as you go deeper into your body and into your experiences. So, this is something that I used to do. I used to practice sex magic. It's about like visualizing success and money and all the things that you desire, basically in these peak moments of orgasm. And while that feels amazing, and it's a real good ego trip, let me tell you, nothing happened for me. I was like forcing and fucking my way through it. And there was still this level of like, I need to control what this looks like. So, I invite you to look at like, what, like, you don't need a manifestation tool. Like, when you are touching upon these deeper levels of your being and accepting yourself, magic is going to happen regardless,
Hmm.
you know? So the part about, opening up into our sexuality as a means for more success in our lives is that it's simply a natural process. Like there's nothing else that you need to do. There's no magic formula where you need to do this sex magic thing and visualize XYZ because it adds to the confusion. It's like now you're forcing your sexual experience to create something for you. And it doesn't work like that. That can actually create a lot of conflict and pain for you because I promise you it's not going to look like what you expect. So, I had some adverse experiences with this myself, and I can speak on this because I fucking did it. And I can tell you that it opened up some really negative forces for me. I don't want to go too woo woo here, but I found that after those experiences, there was something that I was touching upon that just didn't sit well with me. So it's almost like I opened up my energy channel to allow, success to come into my life. But what I didn't realize was I was opening up my energy channel to forces that were also pretty negative and not meant to be there. So just be really discerning with like this manifestation shit because it's it's not all fun and games. And I just want to implement the fact that the way that I have been able to lean further into serving others, lean further into my success, into my business, into financial abundance has never been through the means of quote unquote manifestation. It's simply been a natural occurrence through my own processing. And I think that that really takes the pressure off of us, instead of it being all about me, 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 me. It's like, okay, like I can see the bigger picture here. I can see the bigger vision, how I'm going to impact the world around me, and it's coming from this place of my heart and from living a life that is led through my heart instead of like those. And I mean, I have desires, obviously, but it's not being attached to those desires that ultimately leads to the success.
Hmm. Wow. I mean, I think that that's an important thing to think about and consider, and knowing that you don't have to do more, right? I think that that's really the hurdle that keeps tripping people up, is like it has to look a certain way, it has to sound a certain way, it has to be ceremonic in a certain way, right? Like, gosh, be present, connect with yourself, explore yourself, say yes to the things that bring you joy, and that the success becomes a byproduct of it, right? Like that it does not have to be difficult, but it feels like it has to be difficult because we're told that it has to be difficult.
Yeah. And I think it's so easy to be pulled in so many different directions because
Yeah.
everyone out there is offering the magic solution to your problem. And what I want to say about that is like discernment, babe. Like you have to be discerning. If you're going to Kundalini yoga class one day and then getting a psychic reading the next, and then you're going to this other thing and this other spiritual ceremony, and then you do it, it's just like you are confusing your energy body. You are filling yourself with so much information. You don't know what to do with it. You know what I mean? Like in a world with so many choices, like be discerning to like what path you want to take and commit to that to your fullest. Because what I find, especially when we have so many options, and I used to be the same way, used to be the same way. It's like, oh, I want to explore this and I want to explore that and I want to discover this and and it's just, yes, there is a whole wide world out there, but you have time. Like, don't confuse yourself, don't confuse your energy body. And like, first and foremost, work with your own discernment, which again is going back to that self trust piece. And it's funny too, because discernment rests where? In our sexual center. So I think that's all I need to say about that is like,
Case closed, point made.
yeah.
Amazing. Ava, I adore your beautiful energy around this topic and the work that you do, and I just imagine a world if everyone just had even 10 or 20% more pleasure in their day, how the vibration of this earth would just it would turn on its side in the best of ways,
Gives me
right? Like
chills. Yeah.
same, like literally same. Like it's amazing. So I want to make sure that everyone knows where to connect with you if they're interested in learning more about the work that you do and offer. Where can we find you?
So my website is flamewithintantra.com. I have an activation call available on there, as well as tons of information about the stuff that I do. And then I love to connect with people on Instagram or Facebook. So it's just my first and last name. That's where you'll find me.
Amazing. We'll make sure we put all those links in the show notes. And I'd love to know, what does the word gutsy mean to you?
Oh, damn. Ugh, that's like authentic, being your true authentic self. That's what gutsy means to me. I mean, in a world where like authenticity is seen as gutsy, is, kind of sad, but like your authenticity, I think that's what being gutsy is, like saying your truth, saying what you actually mean, and just being bold about it.
I love it. Authenticity vibrates on a whole different level, that's for sure. Ava, thank you so much for sharing your energy, your wisdom with us. This really, truly has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
I absolutely love having conversations like this because it humanizes the things about our bodies that so many of us are living with and experiencing and are interested and intrigued by. And what a really incredible reminder how much our personal pleasure can impact our business and life success. And speaking of success, if you're ready to make moves forward, my friend, to get out of your head, to shift the habits, to really find the clarity and the simplicity in your life and your business, then go to lauraora.com and click on book a clarity session today. In the meantime, come say hello. I play the most on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. You can find me using @thatlauraora. And as always, until I see you next time, stay gutsy.